So this is, I feel excited. This is How We Got Here, a lunchtime webinar with Zachary and Jessica. My name is Jessica.
And I'm Zachary.
And we are your facilitators for the upcoming course in Port Townsend, May 3rd through 5th, Learn to Teach Authentic Relating Games. So this webinar is a chance for you to meet us, your facilitators, and hopefully answer your questions about the course, and really hopefully get you to join us for the big party that's going to happen at the beginning of May. So I'm going to take a nice deep breath. I can feel my heart.
Yeah, how are you right
faster. I get nervous on webinars. Like when I see that little, notification in the top left recording, it's so interesting how it activates, like my physical body is activated by this little digital, signal. I feel a little warmer inside my sweater, and I notice as I'm breathing, that's just beginning to slow down. And I feel grateful for the chance just to presence that to start. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
How are you right now?
I'm having a fun adrenal response is how I want to frame it. I'm like, oh, look at that adrenaline. Okay, cool. I'm having a good time. Yeah. I like that the adrenaline hits me. I can feel like pumping in my chest, and then I have like a smile kind of come in. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the call. I'm looking forward to the questioning you part. I'm just like super curious on how that's going to go.
Me too, actually. And I feel like there's a part of me that feels like I can take my heart beating and the warmth in my body and use it better, knowing that you're having the same experience. It's like it becomes more like excitement and fuel rather than like anxiety when I know like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is why we're teaching together.
For sure.
So for those who are on the call, I want to let you know what is ahead. So for the next hour, this is going to happen. I'm going to give a little bit of, I'm going to give the overview of the call, which I'm doing now. And then Zachary's going to lead with saying a little bit about what authentic relating games are. So our Port Townsend class is to learn to teach these games. So let's start just with giving a context. What are these games? So Zachary will lead that. And then we're going to go into interviewing each other. I'll start by interviewing Zachary, and then he'll interview me to give you a little bit of a not a biography, like a biographical account of how we both came into this place where we're now teaching others to lead these games, how we started, what it was like when we were first just participating in these games, which is the place I know many of you are at. I think I wrote in one of my posts that since this work is all about relationship, we designed this webinar so that you could begin to build relationship with us. That's the hope, that you can meet us. Now, some of you know me because you have taken courses with me or attended my weekly games night, which is here in Port Townsend on Wednesdays, called Speak Up. And so I'm especially excited for those who haven't met Zachary to get the chance to meet him as well. You are in for a treat. And then at the last half, or at least last quarter of the hour, we're going to take your questions. So we expect that you might have questions about the course. That's where we'll dig in a little bit more deeply about what's ahead for the course. And then we'll end at the hour and would welcome you all to sign up at the end of the hour for our course. So I'll include information at the end about what signing up entails. You're still within our early bird deadline price. So this is a great season for getting your butt in the door. All right, that's what's ahead. So
I'll take over from here now.
Over to you. Yeah,
okay,
let's start at the beginning.
Okay, so authentic relating. I think there's so many different ways you can break this down, but a lot of the core principles that I find that authentic relating is being yourself as deeply as you can in front of somebody who's doing the same thing, while both of you are doing your best to cultivate curiosity, noticing, and empathy with one another to have like real connection, all while not trying to change, fix, or heal the other person. Like really just like, what's it like being me with you being you? And then like the beauty of it is that like, this is a practice of being, but the cool thing is like, there's some doing that helps you get to the being, like practical steps. Like the way that I like to explain authentic relating is algebra is a mathematic practice, kung fu is a martial practice. Authentic relating is a social practice. These are giving you social tools that you can kung fu your way through any interaction of another human being. Like, oh, I'm noticing this, and I have the tools to have curiosity or empathy or presence. How do I validate while also staying in my own experience? It's just all of these different tools of like, how can I be more myself while being with you and honoring both of us in that? Is essentially what I think authentic relating is.
Oh, I love your definition so much. I will say we didn't script out what we're going to say. We created a bit of an outline, and there's a certain amount of trust, I think, that comes from having led in this style long enough that I know I have in myself, and I certainly have in you, Zachary. That means that when we get to the place where it's time to come up with the thing, it's like, I trust you to have you. I trust you to draw from your experience, to be able to say in the moment something that will be inspired and inspiring. And I loved how you just put it. And by the way, you and I taught a class together last October, of course, as you know, and I remember leading with that very same definition. I just want to underscore it because it's so good, at least the first part. This form of leadership, authentic leadership, is being me, and celebrating you being you. And there's something about that feels so radical. Just the simplicity of it, right? It's like, oh, being me. And I just want to highlight, just to do a small add to what you just shared. I know my experience of learning about leadership prior to this path was about putting something on top of me that I am not, and leading from that place. Almost like putting myself aside. Oh God, whatever I feel, I can't let people see that. Let me put that over here on a shelf. Let me pretend I'm not sad today, or let me pretend I'm not nervous, and let me make it look like I have all the answers and I have it together, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to be a leader here and get people's respect. So learning in this tradition, it's been an unlearning of that hiding. And in that regard, it feels like a radical resistance act to a way of leading that is just denies the self, to be leading from the self, to be leading for the self. In fact, to make the self the source of all the power, the source of the inspiration and the thing that will enable the connection. So this is a style of leadership that is focused on relationship. Relationality is the main value. I went for a couple years to a conference in Boulder called the Relational Leadership Conference. Summit, Relational Leadership Summit. But that's what this is, relational leadership. So I just love how you put that definition together.
Yeah. You know, and I think what I love hearing what you're saying is that I think a lot of us who are in the field of authentic relating or leadership or the health industry or community where we're trying to help people heal, the thing that I like about authentic relating is that if you are the type of leader who's actually being vulnerable and sharing where you're really at, you're essentially modeling the change in the world that you want to see by going ahead and doing the being present, the sharing how you really feel, and having that be okay without having to change that to still be with people.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Good.
So it's really powerful for me.
Good. Yeah, you just really keyed into something that's just, such a superpower in a way. I don't have to change me to be with you. I know a lot of folks say, I don't want to socialize because it takes so much energy to socialize. And when I hear that, I often think that energy is the energy to kind of shift the self, adapt or chameleon the self in order to be in connection, rather than saying, I am going to connect with me, and then learn to actually bring that out more. And that's how I socialize. And that form of socializing is energizing. That form of socializing generates infinite fuel. Okay. But that's a skill set. Yeah. Thank you. Muting, right. That's a skill set. So what we do in authentic relating games, when Zachary and I were talking before this call, he talked about the games as being a tool bag, which is kind of like, it's kind of a weird term on the one hand, but if you really get that the games themselves are a container for the tools that teach us to bring the self on the inside out intact in an authentic way from which to connect with others, then you get what the games are. You get the power of the games. It's like a wrapping of these tools. Because it's one thing to say it, but if none of us ever went to intimacy school or learned emotional literacy in a way that we could access and replicate, then it's just an idea. I don't really know how to get myself out loud in a way that's true for me. I didn't know. I went to school to be an intimacy coach because I was really lonely, really. I didn't know how to get myself, this person who lived on the inside, who I knew on the inside, I didn't know how to make that accessible. I didn't know how to be connectable. Whereas now I can go, God, my heart is beating and I feel warm and a little nervous and really grateful to see your face smiling back at me. It's like that simple thing presences me. So now I'm not alone inside my experience. I'm out loud. And that's where I can begin to break the isolation. Yeah. So these games are the tools, and then playing the games is the experiential gym for building the muscle tone for using the tools. And then leading to teach the games is how we forward the revolution. And that's what we're doing in May. You're still muted.
Yes, all the things you just said. Yeah. So in a presence time, we're at 10:12, and you were talking about wanting to do the intro and then 10 minutes of interviewing a piece after this. Is that what you're still wanting now?
It is. Thank you, timekeeper. I'm now remembering from our class in October. That was part of your role, huh? Consistent. All right. So it's my turn to interview you. So welcome, Kurt. I just saw you join the call. We're going to keep going, and this is the place where I get to get curious about Zachary and ask how you came to be where you are. Mm-hmm. So we'll do this for about 10 minutes, and then we'll swap and have you interview me. So I noticed that as I was preparing for this call, my curiosity was about the moment that kind of started it all for you. And to be honest, I don't know the answer to this. I'm so curious what I'm going to learn about you too. But I found myself curious about, like, where were you, or what happened when you first got impacted by authentic relating games in a way that said to you, this is a path that I want to walk. There's value here for me. I'd love to know about that moment that kind of sparked you to lean into this work.
Yeah. So it was a really powerful moment, and it changed the course of my life entirely. There was a moment, and I remember it really clearly. My ex-wife and I, we were still married at the time. We had made plans to travel the United States and quit our jobs and go. And I was sitting in the passenger seat of the vehicle, and she was like, I don't want to go anymore. And I had been waiting my whole life to go on this kind of trip and to have this type of adventure, and especially with a partner. And just like so angry all of a sudden that you promised me. And I was like, just angry. It was in the tone of my voice. It was how I was treating her, how I was showing up. It was in my anger. And then I paused for just that moment to essentially play the noticing game with myself. And I just noticed, like, what else is going on for me? Because I was at the time in full belief that I'm allowed to have more than one experience at a time. and like what else was going on for me. And I was like, oh, I'm disappointed. I am deeply to the core of me disappointed. And when I touched that, like the anger deflated, my energy shifted, and I just said, I'm disappointed. I was really looking forward to going with you. It's something that I've wanted to do my whole life. And she softened. And then we went on the trip. Like she quit her job and we traveled the United States for 2 years. Like that moment of actually pausing and not going into my patterns of like, I don't feel safe having and loving what I want. And actually just dropping into another state of vulnerability of like, oh, I'm disappointed. And I'm going to share that disappointment with somebody that I love. And I was like, there's something here, this practice in itself. Because I hated the game Noticing when I first started playing Authentic Relating. Like I was like, this game sucks. It's boring. And I want to talk about my feelings, not just name my emotion and then move on. But once I realized I was cultivating a skill set that allowed me in all moments to be like, I'm a little sad. I'm present. Okay. And I feel a little bit of self-love in this moment. Like being able to like kind of tease apart the textures of me in that moment from noticing has empowered me to be so present in so many different circumstances. Yeah. So that was definitely one of the changing points in my life. And I was like, Authentic Relating's badass and I want more.
Wow. I wasn't quite sure where that story was going at first, because I was like, no, wait, you need to talk about the games. But what you did was actually the full expression of the quote games. Like we call them games. But what I heard you say in that story is you took the practice that is the fabric of the games in a moment when you were in a high intensity interpersonal exchange, and you applied it in a way that circumvented, at least, at best, you not going on the trip, but at worst, really hurting probably someone you loved.
Mm.
And allowed you to presence yourself. And then bonus, you got to travel for 2 years. Like it changed the course of your life in a very
huge way.
Yeah, drastic way. I want to just name, so each of the games has a name. And you'll hear later in the call that part of what we're going to be teaching is the skill set to be able to kind of innovate our own games. So you yourself might come up with games that you'll give names to. In the manual of games that everyone who takes this course will get a copy of, you will see games that are kind of the core tool set for anyone who's leading to teach authentic relating games. And one of them is called Noticing. And it's just one of the most powerful tools. The skill set of that game is in so many other games, but the basic idea is, oh, I notice feeling, fill in the blank. I notice the thought, fill in the blank. One sensation I notice in my body is, fill in the blank. Now, we actually did this at the start of the call when Zachary and I both said, this is how we feel right now. And so the Noticing game is kind of true to its name, without judgment, without doing anything. It's just a presencing of the emotion. So, or presencing of the experience. So I'm loving how you put that in context. Would you be able to say, at that point, where were you in having been exposed to authentic relating? Were you participating? Were you leading?
I was still just a participant at that point. I was probably like 6 months into my practice. You know, it was something that I liked it immediately. I mean, anybody who goes, typically the people that would take the time to go to something like that would love something like that, is what I've experienced. And yeah, I liked it. And that was when it really shifted for me. Yeah.
6 months in, you'd been attending games every week, every couple of weeks?
Every week, just about.
Yeah, you were going pretty steadily.
Mm-hmm. No, it wasn't that I didn't have other experiences where I was like, oh, wow, I'm learning a significant stuff about me and like really exploring who I am as a person. And when I started the authentic community in Houston, it felt like the Wild West. like we were really leaning into our edge of exploration and self and like, what do we really want? It was wild and I loved it, but at the same time, like it's deep and powerful, and sincerity was so present through the whole experience. But it was really that moment, the one that I expressed, that I was like, oh wow, I'm different in a way that I appreciate and love far more than I ever imagined in this moment, because of a practice I've been doing every week.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I see that you also, what comes to me as I hear you is, it's like you were able to identify a gap in your own tool set. Like here's this space where if I didn't know what to do, I would just do what I've always done, which is lash out, be reactive, blame. I mean, I'm just guessing, you talked about being angry. So it's like, oh, wow, these tools fill in gaps. I mean, that's certainly my experience.
For sure.
What I want to kind of highlight about your story is that I saw, I would call that leadership, where you actually took leadership for yourself. You took the games and you took leadership for yourself in your life, even though you weren't technically leading games yet. So I'm curious how you went from this place where you were kind of bringing the games into your life and taking leadership, I think, doing the not automatic thing, making a choice, a conscious choice, how you went from practicing in your life to beginning to phase into leading in the authentic relating community in Houston.
I've got this perspective of like things impact people in like really strong ways. Like the phrase that I've always liked to use is like, people that have been hurt go one of two routes. They want to hurt other people so they feel empathized with, or they want someone to never feel what they felt. That comes up for me because there's like, I had this deep, powerful experience and I could have like keep wanting more for myself. Like, oh my God, I want more of these experiences for myself. Or I actually want to give these experiences to the world because they're so great. I'm like, oh my God, everybody should have this. And I definitely had that route kick in where I was like, this is so good for me. And I love this so much. I want to take it everywhere. And I want to plug it in at all the problem places in the world. And I want everyone to be seen, heard, and felt. And like, it was like, it lit a fire under my ass. And I was like impassioned in my soul to be present in a way that others felt safe to be present. And in that, just the natural cathartic change of the world takes place because people are being validated, seen, and heard. And that's all what most people need in a nutshell, in my experience. It's just being seen. And, yeah. So I wanted to see people, and I realized that I thought I was so much in my life before I started facilitating. I thought I was like this great empath, present person who could just see you. But I wasn't validating people. I was like making myself feel good by like being of service and trying to help fix them. And when I shifted gears into facilitation, I was like, I don't want to fix you. I just want to see you. And if I have a problem with you being upset, it's because I'm not okay with you not being okay. And I need to address that, so it's just always a deepening practice and process. And then I moved into facilitation because it actually felt like the next stage of like, now that I'm good at this practice, this actually feels like the progression in my growth to start bringing this to other people and to start facilitating it and bringing my own flair and flavor to my community. Because my perspective is that like what you're able to facilitate and when I'm able to facilitate, we're going to catch different people and we're going to inspire and help people that resonate more with how we're showing up. And I love that. I love that. Like, I love that I can't catch everyone and then I can rely on you to get that done. And that's another reason why I like training people and showing people how to do authentic relating. It's like, please catch the people that aren't inspired and moved and touched and connected to me. Go get them. That's what you're for.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I really love about what you just said about your kind of transition into leadership and then kind of leading leaders is that it sounds like you really began to cultivate the ability to have attention on other people. It's like to feel the difference between attention on self and the self process versus being able to really go, oh my God, I'm seeing someone else, not I'm needing something from them just for my own process, but it's in fact being present with myself that helps me really be able to kind of share these gifts and put attention out. Is one expression I use, is have attention out. And then the piece that I'm hearing really motivated you to teach other people the games is because you recognize we're all going to be bringing some different genius, I would say genius, superpower, like particular flavor to our leadership. And you wanted the people who your leadership wouldn't catch to be caught by other leaders too, like to have the widest chance to expose people to this work. And as I look at your video, I'm guessing that you're moving because there's too much noise at your end. And now your video is unfortunately frozen. Oh, there we go.
All right, there we go. We had a person making a bit of a ruckus, and I was conflicted because I wanted to be present for him, and then I'm also aware of our time container.
Yeah.
So.
Oh boy.
So I moved, honoring our commitment while feeling conflicted because person seems to be in distress.
Oh boy. It's sort of, I appreciate that you're just naming the conflict at your end, and I'm curious what's going on, and also grateful that you're in a place where you can kind of keep your focus here.
Yeah, it's just an individual who seems like an urban outdoorsman, and then he is seeming to be triggered in some fashion, and is wanting help and presence and assistance from others, while not seeming to be able to track that he's causing distress for others. And so I have like care, be like, hey dude, I'll get you a cup of coffee, that's what you're asking for, but you're also like yelling at customers and scaring people away, and yeah. And so I'm trying to stay present to the call.
Yeah.
With that said, let me take a breath, and then I would love to start interviewing you. Would you be open to that?
Yeah, I would. And I'm just grateful that, here we are and people are listening and so on, and you're in a real life moment. Like life is always going to happen, right? What do we do as leaders when life happens? Oh, we have this webinar planned. You happen to be in a public space, and, humans are messy. So how do we just acknowledge it, right? We can go, oh, there's nothing happening. No, there's nothing. There's no one in distress. There's no scene here. Or we could go, oh, this is really happening. It has an impact on you as a being who's responsive to your environment. So let's name it. And I'm glad you did. And I'm a yes to you taking a breath and then transitioning. And I'm grateful to have spent some time hearing a little bit about your story.
Thank you for that. So it's my turn to interview you.
It is.
All right. What gives you the most juice right now in facilitating? Like, you're alive and you're like, man, I'm feeling this. Like, what's your facilitation juice?
I like that word, juice. Well, as you know, I lead games every Wednesday here in Port Townsend. What most people may not know is that there are weeks where I walk in with, I don't recommend this, but I'm just going to say it honestly, with very little structure planned. Yeah. So this is a way to non-verbally say, like, me too. Like, I agree. That's also true for me. Sounds like that's true for Zachary. And I walk in and I go, what the fuck? Like, what am I doing? Why do I do this? I don't even know what I'm going to do. And what happens is, because I have not much content, at least pre-planned, Like, I've been a therapist for nearly 20 years. I've been a group facilitator for almost as long. And so I have a lot of life experience. But if I come in without an agenda, what that means is that I am very with the room. And I am tuned in to the people who might be having a tough night, or who maybe need to have a little more time just to get present. And I can use my ability to respond to that, and the pretty big skill set I have at this point, to be in relationship rather than be in agenda. And even though it makes my body kind of quake, but quaking is juice. You know what I mean? I want to leave that night feeling better than when I started, and I do. Almost every single time. I've found my places where I tip over and I'm just too under-resourced to really stay in the channel of that. But for the most part, my juice comes from actually being able to be really, really live in the improvisational, responsive moment to the people in the room.
Yeah, I love that. It's like touching the lightning of now, you know, and just like being in it, and just like, wow, how are people really right now? Yeah, I love hearing that. So you've already said that you've been a therapist for 20 years. How has doing authentic relating like impacted your life? What has you doing it even? I mean, because you're already having a really powerful practice of being present for people. What's motivating you, and what are you getting out of this?
Well, my path, which currently involves teaching connection games, didn't begin with authentic relating as a group facilitator. So it's really, I've had kind of multiple branches on the tree of learning to be a group facilitator. And my initial games leading experience started with the work I did as an intimacy coach doing sexuality education. And I was in Austin at the time, and this was 2012. And at the time, Sarah Ness was starting to lead authentic relating games in Austin. And I was leading a games night called Turn On, co-leading. I was just in training, really. I was actually a participant, but I was sort of I was a facilitator participant. I was in that role. And the whole concept of those games, which very much overlaps with authentic relating, was being present in the moment, kind of trusting the thing that isn't planned to arise, and that thing that kind of wakes us up, like, what if I say something that's really true? What if I say the things that most people don't say? And now we were focused more around kind of sensuality and sexuality and intimacy in that realm. So it was a little, a little edgier. But I was coming alive in a way that, being a clinical psychologist, so my PhD is in clinical psychology. I've worked in medical environments. I've worked certainly in academic environments. I never felt so alive as I felt at those games nights. Like, I would leave and I'd just be like, "Yoo!" Like, the games nights were called Turn On. I'd leave turned on. And it's not just in a sexual way. And almost more often than not, it was just more like in a enlivened way. Like you said, juice. It's like, woo, I felt juicy by the end of those nights, you know? And like, my world was coming alive and coming into color. Now, I'm no stranger to working hard. Like, I joke, I said, I graduated the 27th grade. You know, I went to school for like a really long time. So I've been very committed to my path. But what I think was missing, there was this feeling of trade-off. Like, in order to get this degree, in order to do this work, I had to trade my aliveness, nose to the grindstone. So it was like, oh, I can do this work and I can come alive by way of this work. And then I started a connection games community in Dallas in 2015. And what happened was I started wanting other people to join my leadership team. And at that point, I realized authentic relating games has a whole system for training in this modality that is a vast improvement on the system that trained me. I learned good skills, but I feel like I did a lot of kind of adapting those skills to become the current model that I now lead from. So in 2016, I took my first authentic leadership training course in Austin with 4 or 5 other people that I brought from Dallas, who then came back to Dallas with me. Micah was one of them, though she'd done other training before that, but she came with for that weekend. I don't think you were there. And it was at that point that I went, oh, this system takes all these principles and organizes them in this super accessible way that really leads to healthy, resilient communities. And that's really where, I do one-on-one therapy. I call it coaching because I have a coaching certification. So I'm a PhD psychologist by training, and now I offer coaching. And that's important work. But what I'd love to see happen, and I believe I'm part of this wave, is that work that typically happens in private, in typically, expensive, professionalized transactions. I want to see it happening in a community. And so that's what these games does as a kind of evolution of what I trained to do as a clinician, is to make accessible the kind of tools that most people only get access to by going to see a private therapist. And then the therapist, the person who typically sits behind like an opaque door, oh, I'm a therapist, so I don't get to be human. That person gets to be human too. So there's this liberation that happens, a communalizing of the resources, a participation by the facilitator in the human process that has me very committed to this path.
Yeah, hearing that, it's like I don't have to stop being me to help the world. I get to be alive and be myself and feel things and love things and not want things, and I get to be me while I'm helping others, and not only one at a time with a lot of money, but a lot of people in a way that's accessible for most. Yeah, that lands for me.
Good. You're like now in the jazz lounge over there.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just name it,
Yeah.
But while you're muted, I appreciate your nonverbals very much.
Yeah.
What we haven't said, and you can certainly ask me a question more too. Someone just signed up for the course. What nice timing.
What?
Zachary and I just want to say a little bit about how we met. And then if you have any other interview questions, please ask them. And then we'll take some questions from our participants. But I was in Austin and then Dallas from 2012, 13, 14, 15. I landed in Dallas, 2014 technically, I landed in Dallas. And I was starting to go to these kind of Texas-wide gatherings, and I would see this guy with the long red hair, and I just was kind of aware of him, but he was in the periphery of my awareness. And he was doing something in Houston. I never went to Houston, so whatever, I have only so much brain space to keep track of people. But then in 2017, I was a lead facilitator at an all Texas authentic relating retreat in Austin. And some session leader hadn't showed up. So myself and 2 other authentic relating leaders took on teaching this session called Jedi Skills. That's kind of like a sexy title. I was like, yeah, I want to teach that. So it was like advanced skills basically for authentic relating leaders. And this guy, Zachary, came. And we had given a little teaching, and we were taking questions, and people were telling stories. And Zachary told this story about his leadership in Houston. And what I remember was that he was saying there was some community, pretty big community challenge. And instead of sort of skipping over it in your facilitation that night, I remember you stopped the whole games night, and that you were so upset, and you addressed whatever the situation was. Like, to me, that is so brave. I remember where you were sitting. It's one of those light bulb moments where like a little lightning bolt comes down and I go, who is that? Like, what he's doing is rare. That doesn't happen. Most people just go, oh, there's an issue. Well, let's tuck that under the rug. Even, the typical authentic relating leader, that is tough to deal with. It's such a risk. But my guess was you earned a ton of respect from your community by actually presencing what was really true inside of you and in the kind of ecosystem of your community. And from that point forward, I was like, you and I will know each other.
Yeah, I love that. I love at the beginning of that story has you essentially how I know you. You took on the role of doing a training within a course that you weren't even signed up for. You just sat down, grabbed the reins, and did your thing. And that's kind of how I've always known you, is like, I don't know this person, but you kind of come in, you've got a ton of skill, you want to help, and you're just in charge all of a sudden. And not in a bad way, but more of like, no, things are getting done, and people are being seen, and things are being heard and felt. And like, my first impression of you was somebody that holds such high integrity and commitment to the work that it felt like an honor to have that experience with you. The one that you were talking about, like the light bulb came on, like this, I'm going to know this person. Because my perspective of you was a person who had such high standards on who should be at the helm of doing these things, because it's so powerful work and so important to really be present and loving and hold yourself simultaneously. You know, you seem to be aware of what we're doing, and that's why I've committed to keep working with you and why I keep showing up, because I love what you're intentionally trying to create. And that was really impactful for me to be seen by you in that moment. Because prior to that, it was just seeing you kind of this person I didn't know, but hanging out with my peers who are the top facilitators in these different communities. So it was just really powerful to have somebody come in out of nowhere and be like, yeah, I see you. And I was like, cool, I see you too. And it's just like one of those moments where I was like, this is good stuff.
Well, I like you talking about us seeing each other. And in this moment, I feel very seen. That's an expression that's often used, like I feel seen, as in what you just reflected about me is something that I want seen. And in reflecting it, I feel kind of more me and celebrated to be me, which is the gift of cultivating these relationships and the gift of being with someone who's steeped in this practice, is we get to like lift each other up all the time in these thoughtful, careful ways. And Zachary and I haven't always agreed. So it's not like it's always this little love affair. That's true, right? Just nod. Like, but we can also navigate those spaces with skill and with care. And it brings us closer. So I want to honor the time. We're at 42 past, and just express a lot of appreciation for your curiosity and your attention. It feels so good. I feel very watered by it. I'm just excited that we're collaborating. Zachary is flying up for the first time to Port Townsend by way of Seattle, of course. Yeah, the last week in April. And I think if all goes well, you might be co-leading Speak Up with me that week. So stay tuned for our community. It's going to get the benefit of Zachary at Wednesday night games. And then Friday, May 3rd, through Sunday, May 5th, we'll be teaching how to teach authentic relating games together. So that is ahead, and I haven't seen you since last year, so I'm especially excited now to see you. So what I'd love to do is to give our participants the chance, it looks like we have 4 folks left on the call live, to give you the chance, Kavi, Oshena, Kurt, or Satora, any of you to type in questions. Or if you're willing, I'd be happy to bring you on the call, of course, with your consent, and then we can see you live, and then you can ask us a live question. So you might have questions about the course. You certainly might have questions about any of the principles we've shared or the stories we've shared. And a big part of this call is in hopes to answer some of those questions. So I wanted to invite, if that's the case, and we certainly have more that we could talk about if you don't have any questions that you have planned. But I'd love to invite you to lean in. Something about this leadership, I was thinking about this recently, underneath everything I do, whether it's a Facebook post or a blog or an intimacy course or an authentic relating course or a dance course, under everything I do, is some form of the message. I am being me, showing me without a filter, showing me in a raw, vulnerable way, in an invitation for you to join me. I recently made a post about some struggles I've had. I was in a kind of challenging moving situation, and I saw a ton of people responded. And I said in a sort of unfiltered way, yeah, it's been a tough time over here. What I'm really saying there is join me in my transparency. Show me you too. So to those participants on the call, if you have any desire to just kind of be seen in what your experience is of this webinar, our hands are extended, and that is not a pressure thing. It's just if that would bring you joy, then I invite you to join us here. And we're going to probably just pause for a moment and take a breath and see if anyone wants to come on. So the way that you would come on the call is you can type in the Q&A. At your end, it might look like chat, so you can type in the Q&A or type in the chat. Either way would work. And let us know if you have a question. Let us know if you want to come on the call. And if all else fails and you happen to already have my phone number, you can also text me. I'll keep my eye on the phone in case you have a question and this technology isn't working for you.
Pressure.
No. So Kavi has a question. Kavi, would you like to come on the call? I can just bring you on the call, or would you like to type your question? So go ahead and clarify. I don't want to bring you on the call unless you're a yes to that. Audio. Oh, okay, let's see. So now we're going to test my ability to navigate Zoom. Okay, so Kavi, you are unmuted. I think you might need to unmute at your end, but at my end, I think you're unmuted.
Hi, just checking if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Jessica, and thanks, Zachary, for this beautiful session today. You know, this is the first time I actually on the meetup heard about authentic relating, and, you know, it instantly connected, with me, and I thought that I need to find out more about it, and I'm glad that I attended this webinar. You know, my question to both of you is that authentic relating is such an amazing concept, you know, where you bring yourself, your honest self to people, you know, and that's how you communicate to people. But what happens sometimes in my experience is that those people may not be ready for that authentic experience. I'm ready because I'm self-aware, and that's why I'm, you know, attending this webinar to understand this more. I might even attend one of your, you know, games to understand it more. But what happens is that, you know, I'm actively dating because I'm single. But when I meet people, sometimes I feel that we all live in the world where everybody is, you know, has masked themselves under the social white lies and what have you, that others are not ready for authentic communication to you. So how do you tackle, or how do you deal with people, which I would say 9 out of 10 at least, you know, in the urban life are, how do you deal with such people, and how do you do your authentic communication with people who are not ready for it?
I have an answer if you'd like, or would you rather go?
You start and I'll follow. I was just so appreciating that question.
Yeah, I love that question too. So I think the beauty of it is so for me personally, I do a question of the day often. Wherever I'm working or whatever I'm doing, I ask strangers all the time a question every day. But what I've learned is that through that practice is that some people aren't ready to answer or reveal themselves for sure. But what comes up for me is that I stop needing immediate connection from people, and I allow rapport to be built through slow presence of actually being myself. Like, I'm giving a green light to the world around me to be an expression of themselves by being an expression of myself. Like, yeah, there's a lot of people that aren't ready because there's trauma and trigger and a lot of things that are having them from being themselves. But have you ever, like, it's almost like I want to ask a question in return. Have you been around that person that has you just feel safe being you? And that's how I show up in the world. I do my best to have people feel safe to be themselves in my presence, to the point to where the first time we didn't go as deep as I wanted. The second time we went a little deeper, third time deeper. And it's like I allow the relationship to build because rapport is taking place, and I'm patient because I'm not needing it immediately, because I'm not coming from a place of deficit, of needing connection to be satiated. That's just kind of where I'm coming from when it comes to authentic relating and people not ready. And I'm honoring that they're not ready. Like, that's the best thing I can do if I'm really being authentic. That person's not ready.
Yeah, great. And I will add to that. I deal with this all the time. I choose to be a change agent in the world. And that means I'm stepping out ahead of where the culture is and saying, look, there's a teacher in Port Townsend who calls it being a permissionary. I've quoted Lawrence so many times. Isn't that good? So the willingness to be a permissionary means that we're kind of stretching beyond dominant culture, just, the paradigm that governs, and that includes the masks, as you said, Kavi. And so I guess there's sort of a twofold answer that I have. One is, what is my commitment to myself? Because if I'm willing to be a change agent, and I look around me and I go, yeah, I've got some light on that maybe some other people don't have on. Am I going to dim that light in order to make other people feel comfortable? So my answer is a qualified no. No, I'm not going to do that, because then I'm not being me. Then I'm not going to really benefit from all the work I've done all my life to recover myself. But nor do I want to do harm in my work to bring change. There's various forms of change, but my choice to bring change is to go, I'm going to give you access to the steps to get here so that you can come along with me. If I turn the volume up at 10 and your decibel system only allows you to hear at 2, then I'm going to hurt your eardrums. That's not fair. That's not, to me, being a responsible change agent. Now, I've studied with those kind of leaders, and that's not the path I choose to walk. So I call it a question of calibration. Am I able to calibrate to the people I'm around and be able to also stay in integrity to myself? That is a high-level skill. That's like an advanced asana, to use yoga terms. You know what I mean? It's the advanced yoga pose. But that's what I commit to practicing, and that's really what I teach in all of my courses, is how do you stay with self, but also not compromise self being in the world. So it's, to me, it starts with something simple, like to be able to say to someone at the cash register, hey, how's your day going? And genuinely be interested in the answer. It's not like, oh my God, let me peer into your soul, or let me sort of pour my personal story on you and you're an unsuspecting victim. It's just being willing to be me. And what I find is it's really attractive. Like, people go, I want what she's having. If I can just calibrate myself in a way that's like, I'm having fun over here, then it's like, oh, people want to join my party. So I offer you a little bit of hope, Kavi. And the last thing I'll say is, it's really important to me to hang out with people like Zachary, and the people who have come up in the Speak Up community, and the people in my local conscious dance community, so that I get fed by the people who not only are ready, but are change agents too. And that creates a lot of resilience in me that I need as I walk into the world where I'm walking against the grain, and I can still go, I'm standing tall, my muscles are working, and I can stay kind of flexible inside of the learning edge of bringing this work into the world. How's that for an answer?
I loved both of your answers. I really, really loved both of your answers. And I especially like the word that Jessica used called calibration. Like, you calibrate your, your communication level to where you think the other person is ready, is ready for. So I think I like that idea, and it perhaps is a learned skill, is not something that would I could learn overnight, but it's something I'll keep in mind next time when I want to have an honest, authentic communication with others. So thanks for the answer.
I hope you will. And do look for Authentic Seattle if you're in Seattle. They have
Mhm.
games, and then you're very welcome to come join me any Wednesday in Port Townsend.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we are going to go over to some questions that have come in. So hopefully we'll have time for both of these. We got 2 questions. Kavi, thanks for starting us off so much and for your courage to share your voice. So Kurt asks, on the more conceptual side, how do you see these games as different from the work of focusing? Okay, so that's a therapeutic process that is a very specific therapeutic process. On the more emotional, affective side, how might such games assist with rough internal personal struggles? I'm having such a situation trying to fit into a new career and feeling rejected because I don't have the resume and perhaps my age. It's been rough. Ugh.
Yeah.
Hearing that last piece, Kurt, I feel a lot of compassion for you. Kavi says you have to leave now. Oh, you're very welcome. Bye for now, Kavi. Okay.
I've thought about this while you were talking. I read it and wanted to
Good.
really be present to this question.
Yeah, go for it.
So when I think about focusing and then I think about authentic relating games, the difference is focusing feels like I'm like trying to burrow down into something, or I'm going in a direction. Like there's a forward energy with focus. And with authentic relating games, when I really am practicing, it has sometimes the potential to be like a focus, but simultaneously a blossoming. Like there's a thing arising in this present moment that I'm holding space for. That could be my sadness. It could be my insecurity. It could be my vulnerability, which sounds like some of that could be what's going on with the roughness with where your position is. It's like there's some vulnerability and some uncertainty and some insecurity because like our jobs are the part of our foundation of our lives that help us feel secure in our whole existence. And like in that, I love to just like let that naturally open up and have somebody be curious with me. And so instead of trying to go down deeper into it, allowing there to be space around each layer of that onion that we're kind of peeling. Like, oh, wow, I didn't realize this is attached and this is attached and all these different things are like, instead of a barren landscape, there's foliage presenting itself in me. Just different types of things are blooming. You know, some of it's beautiful, some of it's thorny bushes, but I'm able to like see each part of myself from a really sincere place because that's the thing is I'm trying to accept myself for who and how I am in that moment, just as much as I'm trying to accept others who and how they are in that moment. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you for tackling that. I think I'll address the second part of the question. Kurt, thank you for your share. The one piece I'll add, because it sounds like there's a lot of kind of personal specific things to you going on, is one of the things that the games offers, I have found, like, and not just the games, but like the medicine inside the games is compassion for self. So connection to self as the starting point for connection to others is such an amazing priority for this work. Connection to self as the starting point for connection to others, and connection to self in a way that's compassionate and curious and forgiving. And the strife you're experiencing, your internal struggle around your work, and it sounds like the question is like, I don't feel qualified, or maybe I'm not the right age. I would offer that one thing that I've gotten from these games, and I have to kind of like forget and remember every week, is having compassion for myself. I walk out of Speak Up every week having so much more compassion for myself. I forgive myself. And when I do that, my struggles feel half as intense. I forgive myself. I think we are unfortunately embedded in a culture that says, I'm not enough. I'm fundamentally flawed. I need to earn love. Okay. This is the incline of the hill that we're climbing up in our cultural conditioning. So I come out of these games and it's like, I don't feel alone. I don't feel as bad. I'm willing to come out of hiding. I can even celebrate myself. Okay. So I offer you that piece, and I have just a real feeling of compassion for you, hearing your struggles, Kurt. I'm glad you're on the call. So I want to see if we can get to Oshena's piece as well. Do you want to add one more thing?
Actually, I'm at my hard stop at 3 o'clock. And I just want to say I appreciate this time that everybody's given us to do this webinar. And I trust that anything that you have to say at this point without the present, Jessica, will be something that I'm grateful that you said and will probably be very much in alignment with. Thank everybody for your time. And I'm really grateful to have this opportunity across the board, being able to go and the potential to train any of you that are interested in being there. So thank you for your time, and y'all have a delightful day. And Jessica, I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. Bye, everybody.
So the last piece I want to read before we close this webinar is something that Oshena wrote that I think is beautiful and is a perfect way to close. And of course, Zachary left. And so it's time to close. Okay. So Oshena, who signed up for the course this week, who's here in Port Townsend, who's been coming pretty regularly to speak up games in Port Townsend, writes, I'm feeling an emerging of excitement in my belly, listening to the two of you talk about the course, the work, and why it moves you. I'm in a tender place in this moment of reclaiming my hold on my desires, my health, and my sense of belonging in the world around me. This discussion has inspired a remembering of why I love this path. I am proud of myself for showing up to this webinar. I am too. And so appreciative of you both and your presence here. Beautiful. So I just want to note that what Oshena just did is a presencing of herself. She didn't have to ask a question. She just let us hear herself, which for me makes me feel a lot more accompanied. Again, like, okay, my co-facilitator just dropped off the call, but I'm not the only one here because, of course, you can see and hear me, but I can't actually see and hear you. And Oshena, I want to say I celebrate that this has had a positive impact for you. I'm so glad you came on the webinar, and I'm so thrilled it worked out for you to join the course. So for any of you who are still on the call, you may have questions left. I am going to close here for now. The course is May 3rd through 5th. Learn to teach authentic relating games in Port Townsend, Washington. The early bird deadline is April 19th. To sign up for the course, please send your course registration payment, which is $250, to drtartaro@gmail.com via PayPal, selecting friends and family. We have kept the course costs low so that as many of you as possible can join us. The more of you who sign up, the more we can make possible our course scholarships, which we always like to offer one. And as long as we get our full course registered by the time of the course, we will offer 2 scholarships, again, to make this work as accessible as possible. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This recording will be on the event page. Please share it with others, and I hope to get the chance to work with you and in a really living way, share this work with you so that you can find your unique expression of leading from your authentic self by coming to our course in May. Thank you all so much, and happy Wednesday.